So I've had this bad boy for, what is it, 2 months now? Where did the time go? Since the Switch 2 launched, but I've been having a blast with this thing. Hanging out with my buddy DK, I've been playing Mario Kart World with my brother on a 100-inch TV, as you do. And some of the upgrades to OG Switch games are, well, game-changing. I mean, better graphics, higher frame rates. Like Tears of the Kingdom, we've gone from 30 to 60 FPS. It's like the perfect upgrade. And of course, the Switch 2 lets us play games that simply wouldn't run on the older hardware. Like, I know this is a new console, and it's 2025, and some of these games came out years ago now, but the fact that I can play Hogwarts Legacy, Cyberpunk on a Switch still seems bizarre to me. But then when you take away the Nintendo element and consider the price, and that you can get Steam Decks and Steam Deck OLEDs and other PC handhelds, and that game is like 5 or 6 years old now, once you get past the hype, was this actually worth buying? Was it worth the 7-year wait from the original Switch for what is essentially the Switch Pro, sorry, Switch 2? Especially when I can play a lot of these more demanding games on my Steam Deck OLED, and it runs and looks better. Although that's a conversation for a different video. Specifically, this video. So 2 months in, and the more time I've been spending with the Switch 2, I find myself going back and forth thinking, hey, this is a Nintendo console. Don't get caught up in all the nerdy little stuff, just have fun. But I also can't ignore the slightly slow, motion blurry LCD screen, the pretty average battery life, the relatively poor repairability, the fact that the Joy-Con still could be prone to stick shift, although thankfully I haven't experienced that myself so far. New consoles are supposed to be better in every way than their predecessors, right? But that doesn't feel quite true of the Switch 2, especially if you're coming from the OLED. It kind of makes you wonder, should I wait for a refreshed Switch 2 OLED in a couple of years? Should I wait for more games to come out, prices to come down? Because actually in the US, prices are going up. Nintendo's official accessories have had like a $5 price bump, nothing too significant, but the original Switch lineup has had a big price increase. Like the Switch OLED is now only $50 less than the Switch 2, which is just ridiculous. But despite the criticism, everyone's having a blast with the Switch 2. Better graphics, faster load times, much better looking games that we couldn't play before, bigger, more comfortable Joy-Cons, the kickstand, which is a big deal if you came from the original Switch, obviously the OLED had it, bigger, brighter, faster screen. It's not perfect, but it is a significant step up overall versus the original Switches. It is a very nice refinement. And seeing how good some of these games look on your big old TV when in docked mode, it's been a good time so far. But it is far from perfect. I wish we had VRR when it was in docked mode. You only get the variable refresh rate in handheld. Also, games on the whole are pretty damn expensive. Battery life is also like stepping back to an original Switch. For me, at like 75% brightness, I got about 2 hours in Cyberpunk, maybe 2.5 in Tears of the Kingdom, 3 to 3.5 in Mario Kart World. Obviously, it lasts longer in more simple games, but it's not ideal for a portable games console. The Switch OLED lasts longer than this. And at first I was okay with the display, I was actually quite impressed, but now some time has passed, it's just started to bother me that they couldn't just take it a little bit further. I mean, coming from the original Switch, this is a huge upgrade. Much bigger screen, brighter, high resolution, higher frame rate, a refresh rate. It is a big upgrade. But if you're used to the Switch OLED, going back to an LCD, the viewing angles aren't great. It's not particularly usable in bright sunshine. And also, being an LCD rather than OLED, you get these kind of washed out grays rather than dark blacks. Does that bother the majority of Nintendo Switch users? No, probably not. But you know, you're paying quite a lot of money for this. There are other options on the market that can do similar things, although obviously not play Nintendo exclusives. When you do have very good competition out there like a Steam Deck OLED, and when in some cases you do have a predecessor that is better than this in a couple of ways, battery life, OLED versus LCD, it just makes you think like, I wish they'd just done a little bit more. With the biggest problem really being the motion handling. Having a slow response time means textures and fine detail look kind of mushy as you move around, especially if you're playing at, say, 30 FPS like in Hogwarts Legacy. You're definitely better off playing docked, assuming you have a decent TV. I've also found the storage filled up much faster than I was expecting. I mean, this has 8 times the storage compared to the original Switch, but I've already used most of it with just a handful of digital games. I would definitely budget for a microSD express card, or better still, buy physical games, which store most of the game data itself on the card, although more on that in a second. Also, am I the only one who wouldn't be against the Switch 2 being just like a tiny bit smaller, a little bit maybe closer to the original, very portable handheld Switch? Or like the OLED version? Was that just me? The Switch 2 also added game chat, where you had the camera, which basically shows your face above, say, in Mario Kart, the little cars, and it's a nice sort of social way if you're not, in the room with your friends. I like the idea of it, but I have to be honest, beyond the initial review, I haven't tried it once. I just leave it on the shelf gathering dust alongside all my VR headsets. And the other kind of new feature is the ability to use the Joy-Cons as a mouse, which does work quite well. I tried Cyberpunk with it. You get much more precise aiming, but I wouldn't want to play the game like that. Fun to play around with, but not exactly worth buying a Switch 2 for. Anyway, enough whinging, Tom. Let's talk about the games. What are the best games? What are the best upgrades? And of course, Donkey Kong Bonanza, Mario Kart World, they're the big two Nintendo exclusives so far. But what about Switch 1 games? Which of those have had the biggest upgrades? Well, both Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom have £8 or $10 upgrade packs, or you could buy full Switch 2 versions if you don't already own them, and they're both absolutely worth it. We get the usual boost to resolution, it jumps from 30 to 60 frames per second, which is by far the biggest deal for me. HDR support, we have faster load times, much higher resolution textures, which really does make it look good, especially in docked mode, although all this does push up the size of the installs significantly. And the fairly basic FSR upscaling makes distant detail and shadows look a little bit ropey. Sticking with the Zelda theme though, and Link's Awakening and Echoes of Wisdom both had very choppy performance on the OG Switch. On the Switch 2, however, both locked to 60 FPS no matter what. And according to Digital Foundry, we're getting 4 times the resolution in both docked and handheld mode versus the original Switch. And this all comes via a free patch. That'll do, pig. Mario Odyssey, still fantastic and looks better than ever on the Switch 2. We're also getting 4 times the pixels. 1080p in handheld mode, 1800p dynamic in docked mode, and both running at a solid 60 FPS now. And just things like the improved draw distance detail makes the game look much better. Again, not bad at all for a free upgrade. Hogwarts Legacy, also a big upgrade, although you do have to pay for this one. It's basically a whole new next-gen, well, current-gen port versus the super cut-down version on the original Switch. Huge bump to resolution, image quality, load times, it's just a night and day difference. It's basically now on par with the PS4 version, only handheld. Splatoon 3, also one of the biggest Switch 2 updates, and again it's free. We're talking full 4K 60 in docked mode, that's a 4 times increase in the pixel count, and handheld we're going from 720p at 60 to a full 1080p at 60. Honorable mentions also go to Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, eliminating all the stuttery performance, now hitting 60 FPS at near 4K when docked. Metroid Prime 4 also gets some visual upgrades, but it's the jump to 4K 60 when you're docked, and 1080p at 120Hz with VRR in handheld mode. Those are the biggest upgrades. And in fact, some supposedly 60 FPS Switch 1 games were just using double buffer VSync, and in fact really ran at 30, but now they run properly at 60. Across the board, you're going to see improvements, but it does come down to the individual games, whether they've had a patch, whether it's a paid upgrade, how much effort the developer has put in. But given it's only been a couple of months, we've got 2 fantastic exclusives, we've got some huge updates to particularly the first-party Nintendo games coming from the Switch 1 to the Switch 2, and just generally speaking, some pretty nice updates to a lot of games. Whatever you're playing though, it will look great on the Switch 2. A little bit of a spoiler for my Steam Deck versus Switch 2 video though, is that generally speaking, games do look and play a bit better on my Steam Deck OLED with that screen. 90Hz OLED, it's brighter, the battery's also better on this. And also, of course, you've got the full Steam library, so you have a lot more games on here, but you don't have Donkey Kong or Mario Kart, the new ones. Really, it comes down to, do you want to play the Nintendo exclusives? Do you want a Switch 2 or just a handheld PC games console? Just my opinion, of course, but I would go for a Steam Deck OLED over this. That's just me. Now, if you are thinking of picking up a Switch 2 or you already have one, couple of quick tips. Firstly, I would definitely try and get physical games where possible instead of digital downloads, because while this isn't the case for all games, some of them have the game data on the physical card, which means you can sell it, you can trade it, you can give it to your mates afterwards, and given how expensive some of these games are. Problem is, Nintendo's new game key system has kind of muddied the water. In some games, it's just a key that unlocks the game to download and play rather than actually containing the game data. But the good news is that some physical games like Donkey Kong Bonanza, like Cyberpunk, do actually include the game itself, so it's worth checking if that's the case before buying. Couple of tips to make this last longer, improve your battery life. Disable 120Hz mode. Make sure you're using auto brightness. You can also set the RGB range to limited rather than full, although it won't look quite as good, but it will save you a little bit of power. You can also turn off HDR and VRR, and also use airplane mode. This will all help extend your battery. You can also set a shorter sleep period, and stop charging at 90% will keep your battery healthier for longer. Alternatively, just bring a power bank with you. You've got 2 USB-C ports, and you might have one anyway for your phone or your laptop when you're out and about traveling away from the wall. So yeah, you can just extend your battery with an external power bank. Also, don't ignore the accessories. A decent case and ideally a screen protector are pretty much essential. That screen is quite vulnerable, and repairing this thing isn't easy. Also, for longer gaming sessions, or if you want a bit more comfort or a bit more precise control, then definitely pick up the Pro Controller. You do get this guy in the box when you buy the Switch 2, but the Pro Controller definitely adds a lot more options, also is more comfortable. Quite impressed I did that. I really love this magnetic Joy-Con system. It's so much better than the rails on the old one. So much better. Like, even that is much more comfortable than using it next to the screen, and you can then obviously use the kickstand. And if you are a weirdo and fancy using the mouse mode, then don't forget to attach the wrist strap, as I feel like this makes the Joy-Con more stable. And if you use it like this a lot, then maybe get a third party or even a 3D printed mouse cover to make things a bit more comfortable. Also, I'm sure you already know this, but did you know you can long press the home button to bring up this sort of quick menu for brightness, volume, flight mode? And tip number 6, share your games. If you do buy the physical cartridge, I'm going to call them cartridges even though they're just cards, and it does have the game data on them like Donkey Kong, give them to your mates. The games are so freaking expensive, and you spent so much money on the Switch and everything else. So to be fair, you can share digital games, but it is just a little bit trickier than giving someone a physical game card. You just have to create a family group in your account settings, and then invite your friends or family via email. Then you open the virtual game card menu on your Switch, pick a game and select Lend to Family Group Member. Then bring your friend's Switch nearby, and you can share your game to their machine for up to 2 weeks, and then it will come back to yours automatically. So then what's next for the Switch 2? Well, we've just had Nintendo Direct with some new Switch 2 games announced, like Borderlands 4, we've got Monster Hunter Stories 3, 007 First Light, which looks like a PS3 game, but mostly a lot of ports of existing games and upgrades to Switch 1 titles like Kirby and The Forgotten Land. But also, we've just had Nintendo's Indie World showcase. I think we can all agree the Switch 2 is a lot of fun. Is it worth the money? Well, that's up to you. Is it a big upgrade from the Switch 1? Yes, but you know, it's not perfect, and there are still some shortcomings that leave the door open for a Switch 2 Pro at some point, or Switch 2 OLED. I think really we're all just waiting for a new Mario game, because now, you know, we've played Donkey Kong and Mario Kart. Except for going back to old Switch 1 games, there's not a ton to play on this right now. At least for me. But also, it's only been out a couple of months, and that's always the case with new consoles. But what about you? Have you picked up a Switch 2? If so, what do you think? What are you playing? And if not, why not? And what would tempt you to pick one up? Thank you so much for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed this. If you did, a cheeky like and subscribe would be fantastic. I'm going to stop waffling now and actually go back to playing games. See you.